My hands were shaking as I placed a white rose on his coffin. Daniel always said white roses were for peace. I wondered if he'd finally found some. Around me, the church smelled of old wood and perfume. Whispers floated through the air like smoke. Words I couldn't quite catch, but I could feel the judgment in every glance. "She looks calm, maybe too calm," someone muttered behind me. They didn't know that calmness was just what happens when the heart breaks beyond repair. For 15 years, Daniel had been the perfect man, successful, charming, loved by everyone who never had to live with him. Even now, lying motionless in that polished oak box, he still looked like he was in control. His mother sobbed uncontrollably in the front pew. His business partners whispered to each other about how sudden it all was. And our son, dear Michael, sat beside me, staring at his father's coffin as if the world had stopped spinning. The priest began to speak, words about life, loss, forgiveness, but they passed through me like wind through an empty hallway. I stared at Daniel's photo, that confident smile, the same smile that had once made me fall in love, and lately, the same smile that had begun to feel like a mask. Then, out of nowhere, a sound sliced through the silence, ringtone, a bright, cheerful melody that didn't belong in a place like this. For a second, nobody moved. The priest's voice faltered, heads turned, scanning the benches. But the sound wasn't coming from the guests, it was coming from the coffin. Daniel's phone, the one I had placed in his jacket pocket just hours before, was ringing. The vibrations rattled softly against the wood, muffled but unmistakable. My heart stopped. I looked at the screen through the small opening in the coffin lid, and that's when I saw it. The name flashing in bright letters, my love. The entire room froze. Gasps rippled like a wave. Someone dropped a prayer book. It hit the floor with a dull thud. I felt everyone's eyes on me. Pity, confusion, curiosity, but I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The ringing stopped after 3 tones, leaving behind a silence so heavy it felt alive. Inside me, something twisted. That name, my love. It wasn't me. Daniel never saved my number like that. He had always been formal. Margaret, home, not my love. So who was it? Before I could think, the phone buzzed again. A message this time. The vibration made the coffin tremble faintly, like the dead were trying to speak. The priest tried to continue, voice shaky, but I could see the panic in his eyes, and the curiosity in everyone else's. "Should we answer it?" whispered one of Daniel's colleagues. I shot him a glare so cold it froze him mid-sentence. "No," I said, "let him rest." But inside my mind was screaming. Who was calling? And why now, of all times? I tried to compose myself, pretending it was nothing, a telemarketer, a wrong number, but deep down, I knew better. Daniel had kept his phone locked with Face ID, only he could open it. But he wasn't supposed to need it anymore. My fingers twitched, desperate to grab the phone. My son Michael noticed. "Mom, are you okay?" he whispered. I nodded, forcing a faint smile. "Yes, darling. Just tired." But I wasn't tired. I was terrified. When the ceremony ended, people began lining up to pay their respects. Each handshake, each "I'm so sorry for your loss" felt faker than the last. And then, as I leaned closer to the coffin for one final goodbye, the screen lit up again. This time, the preview flashed only 2 words. "Miss you." My breath caught. Whoever my love was, they didn't know he was gone. I stared at Daniel's still face. For years, he'd told me everything, or so I believed. Now, standing over him, I realized I might have been the last to truly know who he was. Was this person just a fling, a secret lover, or something darker? Something that might explain his accident? I didn't have answers then, only questions, sharp, endless, burning. As I walked out of the church, the phone still inside his coffin, I knew that death hadn't ended Daniel's lies. If anything, it had only started the conversation. That was the moment. I whisper now. I realized my husband had died with secrets I was never meant to find. The house felt different after the funeral. Too quiet. Too big. Every photo on the wall was smiling, but none of those smiles were real. For years, I thought I had the perfect marriage. Now I wasn't even sure if the man I buried was the one I married. I opened his closet, something I hadn't done in months. Rows of neatly ironed shirts, the same aftershave scent, but then behind his suits, I found a small box. Inside, a ring, but not mine. A diamond band engraved, "Forever, my love." His wallet was still on the dresser. Inside, I found a folded piece of paper, old, creased. It was a letter, not from me, but to her. "You make me feel alive again. I wish I'd met you first." That's when I realized our entire marriage had been a performance, and I was the audience. That afternoon, Mrs. Hargrove, our neighbor, stopped by with cookies. "He was such a kind man," she said, avoiding my eyes. Then she paused. "You know, I often saw him by the lake. Always with the same woman." My stomach dropped. The lake, the one he said he went to clear his head. He wasn't clearing his head. He was living another life. That night, I sat by the window, the sound of rain tapping against the glass. I played his voice note again. But then, at the end, a faint sound, a voice, not his, a woman's laughter. "You mean everything to me?" My blood ran cold. She wasn't just his secret. She was still out there. I sat on the edge of the bed that night, Daniel's phone glowing in my hand. My heart was pounding so hard it drowned out the rain outside. The lock screen opened with his Face ID. One final betrayal made easy by death. My breath stopped. Hundreds of photos. A woman in every one. Laughing, holding his hand, kissing his cheek. A woman I had never seen before. In one photo, she wore my wedding necklace. The one Daniel said was one of a kind. That's when I realized my husband hadn't just cheated. He'd replaced me. The photos had a name tag, Sophia Bennett. I whispered it like a curse, a name so beautiful it almost mocked me. I searched her online, perfect smile, charity events, designer clothes. Everyone adored her. And somewhere in those posts, Daniel's shadow was always there. A hand, a reflection, a caption. "Weekend at the lake house." Our lake house. The place where he said he went to clear his mind. In Daniel's office, I found a drawer locked with a key. He'd hidden it well, taped behind a family portrait. Inside the drawer, I found a sealed envelope. My name written in his handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. It wasn't a letter. It was a legal document, a second will. He had left everything to Sophia Bennett and her unborn child. My knees buckled. I grabbed the desk for balance, staring at those words again and again. Unborn child. My husband wasn't just unfaithful. He was building a new life while mine was ending. I screamed. I didn't even recognize my own voice. The sound echoed off the empty walls. The same walls that had heard every lie. 15 years. 15 years of loyalty, of sacrifice, of love. And this was my reward. A name I didn't know and a child that wasn't mine. I tore his photo off the wall. For the first time in my life, I didn't cry for Daniel. I cried for myself, the woman I had been before him. But then something strange happened. As I packed his things to donate, I found a funeral program with handwriting on the back. One sentence. She was there, watching. I turned the paper over. A faint lipstick stain marked the corner. Sophia had come to my husband's funeral, watching me, smiling maybe. And that's when I knew this wasn't over. It was just beginning. They called it the perfect marriage. Beautiful house, expensive dinners, weekend getaways. But what they never saw was me crying alone at 2 a.m. while he slept soundly beside me. I used to believe love meant trust, that Daniel's silence was peace, not distance, that when he said, "I'm just busy with work," it wasn't a lie. I was wrong. After the funeral, I couldn't sleep. His phone, the one that rang on his coffin, wouldn't leave my mind. Who was my love? Why didn't she know he was gone? I remember one night, maybe 6 months before he died, he came home late. He smelled like someone else's perfume. Not too strong, but enough for me to notice. I asked him. He smiled and said, "You're imagining things." And I believed him, because that's what wives do when they love too deeply. After the funeral, I decided to pick up his things. His suits, his papers, his watch. But tucked beneath the drawer, I found something else. An envelope, no name, just a lipstick mark. Inside, a photograph. Him, holding a woman I'd never seen before. They looked happy. My world didn't just fall apart that day, it exploded. And how long had I been living in a lie? I went through his emails, his photos, deleted folders, hidden drives, and then I found messages, dates, hotel bookings, love letters signed with the same words I saw at the funeral. Miss you. She called him Danny. Only his mother and I ever called him that. I could have screamed. I could have broken everything he left behind. But instead, I just sat there numb, reading every message from a stranger who loved my husband. And then, one night, my phone rang. No number, just unknown caller. Something in me said, "Answer it." When I did, a soft voice whispered, "Daniel, are you there?" That's when I knew. She had no idea he was dead. I didn't speak. I just listened, because for the first time I wasn't the wife anymore. I was the stranger in someone else's love story. They say time heals all wounds. But what if time only sharpens them? It had been 3 weeks since Daniel's funeral, and every night I found myself whispering his name, not out of love, but out of anger. I started keeping notes, dates, names, patterns. If Daniel could lie so perfectly, then I could learn from the best. Her name was Sophia, the woman who texted, "Miss you," the woman who had no idea she'd been loving a ghost. It wasn't hard to find her. Daniel had been careless. Same restaurants, same weekend trips. Her face appeared in a photo he'd once claimed was a business dinner. Now that dinner had a name and a smile. I could have hated her instantly. But hate is too loud, and I needed silence and to think. So I created a new profile, a friendly stranger, someone who could slip into Sophia's world unnoticed. Soft chuckle. Within days, she accepted my friend request. At first, we talked like two strangers with too much time. Work, life, coffee. But slowly, I guided the conversations, little breadcrumbs leading her toward memories of Daniel. Sophia, text, "There was this man once." Daniel. He made me feel seen. When she said his name, my heart stopped. Not from pain, from control. She didn't know the woman she was confiding in was the wife he betrayed. Sophia, he told me he wasn't married, that his wife died years ago. Cold whisper. He said I was dead, and yet I was right here, listening. That was the moment I realized Sophia wasn't just his secret. She was his second life. I told Sophia I was a writer, collecting stories about love and loss. She opened up like a diary. Every detail she shared was a thread, and I was weaving a noose. I learned where she worked, where she lived, even the coffee shop she went to every Sunday, and that's where I saw her in real life for the first time. So I stayed. Week after week, I met her there. Always as the friend she trusted, the only one who truly understood her pain. She cried once while telling me how Daniel promised her a future. I held her hand, and I whispered the same words Daniel once told me. You deserve honesty. She had no idea what was coming. One evening, I invited her to my home. I told her I wanted to show her something for my book. She smiled, completely unaware that the walls around her were lined with photos of Daniel and me. Sophia, voice trembling. Who is that? I said calmly. My husband. Daniel. Music drops, pure silence. Sophia, whisper. No, that can't be. I said, but it was. And watching the truth crawl across her face was the closure Daniel never gave me. She cried for hours. Not because she'd been part of a lie, but because she realized she wasn't the only one who'd loved a ghost. When she left, she said something I'll never forget. If you think Daniel lied to you, you haven't found everything yet. That night, I realized Sophia wasn't the end of my story. She was the beginning of another secret.